later. So hopefully that's not going to prevent you from, you know, asking questions and chiming in, because ultimately that's what this is about. You know, it's sort of an open forum for us to learn. And sometimes the best way to learn is by asking insightful questions. So like I said, my name is Scott Rather. I am the employment program manager at Scott Air Force Base. Everything I do is not necessarily related to the TAP program, because all that stuff is sort of especially mandated. I'm a little bit more on the job search strategy side of things, and that's developing different types of workshops and doing one-on-one consultations with my clients to get them going in the right direction, so that way they can effectively find their next career goals. So a lot of times that's active duty military members. It could be a veteran, military spouse, dependent, etc. And in reality, if I've got some time on my hand and you want me to talk to your college student, I'm happy to talk to that individual as well. I'm a certified professional resume writer, certified professional career coach, life coach, and over the summer, I just got certified for federal employment and writing the federal resume as well. So while I have a wealth of knowledge, and I have literally been writing resumes since 1992 on a word processor before the internet. So I've been doing it for a super long time, but I've been doing it. I've been sort of studying, writing, and I think I have a pretty good idea of what really works for a resume. But the one thing that I don't have is sort of the hands-on looking at hundreds of resumes a day, calling potential candidates up and asking them, what they're looking for a career, and making sure the resume aligns with the position description, et cetera. All those sort of things, understanding an applicant tracking system. I think I understand it, but I've actually never worked one or seen one before. So that's why whenever I do some sort of a workshop, I try to bring in somebody that works within the industry that does it on a daily basis. And today, my good friend Katie has stepped up to the plate, and she's going to be co-facilitating with me as we go through these slides. As we look at different types of resumes, we're going to dissect them. And what I really like about having recruiters with me is that as we're looking at these resumes that are sort of examples in real life resumes that my clients have used, just getting the feedback from Katie, I like this one doesn't really work for me, etc. And then it should give us a better overview of what might be an effective resume as you start to look for employment and start to apply for jobs. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Katie and let her go ahead and introduce herself, and then we can continue to press forward.
All right, thanks, Scott. So it's great to get to see everybody today. I'm glad you guys can make it. And Scott always has amazing presentations that are just so informative, and it's awesome. Great knowledge, great stuff to know. I am Katie Steinbeck. I'm a military talent recruiter for Accenture Federal Services. So in what I do basically day to day is I help transitioning military members. It could be veterans, it could be military spouses, and just kind of give advice. I look at a lot of resumes a day. I've already looked at a lot. I've actually seen a lot this morning too. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and kind of try to shed some light if I can. I'm not gonna lie, I'm here to also soak up knowledge from Scott too. Because I feel like you can never stop learning, and even though I look at them, all day, every day, I feel like Scott has a lot of knowledge too. So I'm happy to be here and give my perspective and help out where I can. So
that's awesome. Thank you. So yeah, I think between the two of us, we're always learning, and I believe that we're both going to gain some knowledge throughout this process. And once again, please feel free to ask any questions that you might have, and then we can kind of go forward from that. So as you can see, I had to make a little bit of an edit here because it was 2021. Now we've moved into 2022. The one thing that I tend to like to talk about in this slide is really kind of understanding the process of looking for employment. And it kind of falls into about 5 different categories. And Katie, feel free to chime in if there's anything that kind of sticks out to you. And really, this is based off of a poll where they asked transitioning military members, what do you wish you would have done a little bit better before you left the service? And I took out the statistics because they're all really kind of close to each other. But the number one thing people wish they would have done better is developed a network. And if we were in a classroom type setting, I would tend to ask people, what does this mean to network? In the convenience of time and kind of where we're at and what we're doing, I'll go ahead and kind of answer what I believe it would be the right answer for this. And to me, building a network is not just about going to a networking event, meeting somebody at your son or your daughter's soccer game, or maybe even on LinkedIn, you exchange information, you have their business card, and then it just kind of sits there. Building a network is actually about creating relationships with other people and nurturing that relationship. So that way a person can sort of get a better understanding of who you are as an individual and a professional, to the point where they really kind of want to do whatever they possibly can to help you out in reaching your career goals. And with that said, it goes both ways. It's also you getting to know that individual, what their goals are, and helping them reach those goals as well. So it's really sort of a give and take type process, and not just sort of take. And I'm going to ask Katie sort of about this one. When people are sort of reaching out to you as somebody that has the ability to hire them, what would be the most effective way that would make you want to sort of step up to the plate a little bit more to provide them extra guidance as far as building a network with you? What is it that really kind of stands out to be like, yeah, I really want to help that person out, versus a person that might just be going straight into the ask and kind of turning you off?
Yeah, so that definitely happens. Some people just go right at it, and it's like, well, it definitely. I mean, if you were to get a referral from me or any other recruiter, like, we're sticking our neck out for you. So and our reputation as well too. Like, if you refer someone, so I feel like developing that relationship is super important. So going back to your question, Scott, I tend to build really good relationships with people who are super honest and reach out to me and say, look, I'm in the market. This is my story. Definitely let me know your story. Let me know what's happening with you, where you've been. Let me know where you want to go. Different, just kind of tell me your background, and don't be shy about it's the actual relationship, So yeah, I think it's definitely important. And then the networking, kind of going back to it, Scott, if you don't mind if I go back to it real quick. Yep. So the networking for me, I feel like it really is a priceless tool. Don't underestimate it. If you are in the market for a job, it can be done virtually. It can be done on social media. And I will say real quick, like, that is why I am here today, is networking. That's how I got my dream job, is by networking. So I definitely don't underestimate it. But yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to your recruiter and build that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, just one last thing, and we'll move on to the next topic, so to speak. I really think that's why a lot of people should be here. I just noticed Mark Gavin just dropped in some information in the chat box. Mark is absolutely amazing. So definitely reach out to him and the guidance that he provides. Hopefully he'll unmic sometime throughout this afternoon and give us a quick overview as to what he does and how he can help you as a transitioning service member or veteran. And then we can kind of plug on from there. So Mark, I won't forget about you. We'll definitely get you an opportunity to take the stage, so to speak. Next, we really kind of want you to be patient. This process can be long, it can be daunting, it can be negative. It can really start to build up on you, as far as maybe self-doubt might creep in. Those types of things will start to play into effect. So this is why, once again, it really having a network and having people that you can count on and rely on and reach out to when time gets hard is really important, because it could take a while. The average length of time it takes an individual to find employment is going to be about 4 to 6 months. So with that said, we then want you to start early. And literally, this morning I was on an LinkedIn audio with Alfredo, and there was people that came up on stage and they were talking about how they wish they would have started early. And as a result, they're teaching other people to begin the process sooner than later. So with that said, hopefully you're not in a place where you're a little bit behind the curve. But if you are, there's a lot of great resources that are going to get you spun up. But with that said, definitely reach out to your troops, your airmen, those other people that are alongside of you, and let them know that they have to start this process early. And then finally, make sure you make a plan, whether it's the process of building your resume, developing a LinkedIn profile, starting to engage, going to job fairs, doing your VA disability, setting up all those different things that need to be done before you leave the service. Set up a plan for that. And I actually have a sort of a timeline sheet that during the break, I'll go ahead and I'll attach it to the chat for you to follow. For the most part, many of you have maybe already have seen this, but if you haven't, it could guide you as you go through this process. And then finally, I want you to think like a recruiter. This is a little bit hard because you're kind of like, well, how do I think like a recruiter when I don't really know what a recruiter does, et cetera? Basically, what I'm saying here is understand your demographic. Understand the people that you're trying to market yourself to make their job a little bit easier, and then make their job successful for yourself. So with that said, Katie, how many jobs are you yourself right now requisitioning?
Well, I think mine is definitely a little bit different just because I do so many SkillBridge, hiring our heroes. I do a lot of, because I am the military liaison, and I don't think I mentioned, I am in the St. Louis office. I don't think I mentioned that. I am with AFS, but I am in the brand new St. Louis office. So we are definitely trying to build up our office here. But yeah, I guess, and it's so hard to say, Scott, because I not only do I do that section and that part of it, but I also have other requisitions. So, but they're not necessarily like set requisitions. So I think it's a little bit different. I have basically I'm kind of a unicorn hunter. So I have, they'll say, oh, I need this person to have TS, SCI. I need them to have, this experience, go find them, and then I bring them back. So that's kind of that part of it.
So is that sort of like sourcing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're out there kind of searching for that purple squirrel.
Yeah. Yes, that is exactly it.
So with that said, if you are that purple squirrel, then as you're sort of thinking like a recruiter, you want to make sure that whether it's the content that's in your resume or in your LinkedIn profile stands out, so that way they can see, yes, this is the person we want to talk to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And I do want to say also, I love that you brought up the being patient part, because I want to real quick. When I first, we just transitioned, we PCS from Pearl Harbor last April. It took me 7 months to land my dream job. And if I had started earlier, but I was so I was like, oh, we're moving across sea, overseas. It was just so chaotic. I didn't even think about networking before I left. And I wish I had. So I'm one of those here saying, do it now, start your networking. So maybe it won't take you 7 months as well. So that was a great point, Scott.
Thank you very much. All right. So the purpose of your resume, and what I really kind of like about aligning Rock Your Resume with this sort of ideology is that your resume is literally only a ticket to the show. It is designed to entice the reader, the recruiter, the hiring manager, the talent acquisition professional to pick up the phone, to give you a call, get a little bit more insight on who you are, and then make a determination as to whether or not they want to bring you in for an official type of interview. So the best way to do that is to show your value to that employer. We want to make sure that you're not only highlighting your skills, but you're also showcasing your accomplishments that match up to the job that you're applying for. So keep in mind that the resume is designed to change, to match up to the position you're pursuing, while showing them the impact that you're going to have on that organization, whether that's providing scope of responsibility, accomplishments, increased, decreased, enhanced, and then have dollar signs and percentages above it. You are more than a job description. But so many times we look at resumes and it's only reads like a job description. Show them how you stand out above your competition.
Yeah, I agree like 1000%. And I like that it says, I love that this slide says use it as a marketing tool, because that is exactly what it is. Use it as a marketing tool. It's a way to pitch your worth and your value to whatever organization that you are applying to.
So with that said, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of look at the different areas of a resume, or the different parts of a resume, in a little bit more detail. We'll look at what's at the slide, and then we'll bounce around, and we might look at some really example resumes that have been prepared, and sort of discuss the pros and cons as to what it is that we're seeing. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to unmic. I'll do my best to sort of take a dramatic type of pause to give you that opportunity to ask a question. If not, my other here is monitoring the chat. So please feel free to put your question in the chat, and we would be happy to answer it for you. So with that said, the first thing that we're going to look at is the header. And this is essentially where the recruiter gets guidance on how they're going to reach out and connect with you. So the general rule of thumb these days, as the trends have sort of changed, is that you no longer have your physical address in the header of your resume. It could only potentially serve as a barrier to employment. And the two examples that we have here between Rose and Carol is, if we can see here, Rose has that she's in Singapore. So Katie, who needs to put a person in a position as soon as possible, would probably bypass Carol because she's overseas. And that's a huge extreme example of what we're looking at. But the same thing could be said. You're in St. Louis and you're applying for jobs down in Tampa Bay. If they see that you're at Scott Air Force Base or Belleville, Illinois, or O'Fallon, Illinois, they're probably going to look at local candidates before they look at you. So by removing your physical location, they really don't have any idea where you're from. Thus, they pick up the phone, they give you a call, and then that's where you can have that verbal conversation to explain to them how you're getting down there, when you're going to be down there, and how everything is going to work out perfect, and there's no reason to look past you as a candidate. Another big difference here that we're looking at is Rose's has her LinkedIn URL. I think this is an extremely important aspect because a resume really only tells part of the story. Whereas if you have a complete, solid LinkedIn profile, it will help tell the rest of the story that that recruiter might be looking for to determine how you're going to be a fit within their organization. The other major difference that we have here is that Roses does have a QR code attached to it. This is just Scott, and Katie can back me up on this. I probably wouldn't have my QR code in my resume. I don't necessarily see a recruiter pulling out their phone to scan that QR code to see your LinkedIn profile or whatever it might be. The URL is already there for them to go look at your LinkedIn profile if they want to. Maybe on your professional networking card, it might be advantageous, but for your resume, I'd probably say no.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's kind of when it first popped up. I was like, I don't know. As a recruiter, I try not to use my personal phone at all for anything having to do with work. So I wouldn't use it personally. And I wouldn't. And the putting your place of residence, especially in the remote world kind of that we're living in now, I feel like it's okay. You don't have to put that. And I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of times where sometimes I'll send a resume to someone else on my team because I'll be like, oh, I know they have a rec that this might fit. Immediately, if there is an address on there that is not, say they're looking for St. Louis and it says San Antonio, they're instantly going to send it right back to me. And they're going to say, basically, why are you sending this to me? But they don't know that they're relocating, so there's just a lot so you were right. I agree with you.
Thank you. I'm waiting for you not to agree with me. I'm sure it's going to happen, but here we go. All right. So as we continue this slide, another thing that I tend to like to do is how, his official name is Kenneth, but he goes by Kenny. By having this in there, it really kind of tells the recruiter that when they make that phone call, the best way to address him. And I had a client not just too long ago, he actually went by his middle name instead of his first name. So just sort of taking the approach on how to address that sort of situation in his resume as well. And then finally, this is like super huge. And shout out to anybody that understands rocking the suburbs, what that means. Hopefully you're a big Ben Folds fan and you understand it. But really, and I could have gone a lot worse because I've seen a lot worse as far as email addresses. But please, please, please make sure that you have a professional email address. And, I had this discussion in my federal employment workshop that was on Tuesday. A lot of organizations don't contact you by phone. They contact you by email. So by having an email address that has a bunch of spam in it, whether it's coupons and everything else that you might be getting, you might miss that correspondence from that recruiter. So not only are we looking at having something professional, but we're also looking at having something that is only designed for your job search, which means everything that's going to that email is related to you looking for employment. So the best way to go would be first name, last name, first name, last name, middle initial, first name. Try to avoid what could potentially maybe be your birth date in using numbers. You could go first name, last name, and then you're going to Atlanta. So maybe you do ATL. There's a lot of different ways that you can mix it up. So that way you have something unique, but you definitely want your name in that email address. And then I'm going to ask you, Katie, what would you think, besides the fact if it was unprofessional, what do you as a recruiter think if you were to see something like AOL or Yahoo? Does that play any type of difference in maybe becoming a barrier if it's not an up-to-date server?
That's a really good question. I don't want to say I make a judgment, but if I do say something that says like at AOL or at what was the other one? There was another one too. And if it's then I'm just like, oh, they must be old school, or I'm like, oh, maybe they're a little bit, maybe they're retired, or like I don't know. And that is kind of what I think. So yeah, but I mean, I'm definitely not gonna disagree with you on this one about the professional email. So you don't get my disagreement on that one. I had the most recent one I had that was interesting was I think it was Melissa's Poodle Pookie. So yeah, so definitely, yeah. Yeah, so I'm not going to disagree with you on that one. Make sure it's professional for sure.
Okay, good. So a question came up, and I'm gonna let you handle this one. It was, if I'm looking at a resume, should I put my picture on my resume?
Ooh, that actually I was mentoring someone recently and that came up. And she decided to put her picture. I honestly, I don't think you should. I think it's best to just keep it simple. I think it's best to just do, your name, your basic contact information and no picture. But that's me because I feel like it's distracting. Like if I'm looking at something, I feel like it's distracted and I'm taken away from the facts of your resume, kind of. So yeah. And
Yeah,
it also takes away like a possibility of any type of discrimination. You know what I mean?
that's that's the
So
one, that's the one reason I was
mhm,
probably going to go against it, is
yeah.
it could create some sort of discrimination that a lot of recruiters slash headhunters, or not headhunters, but HR specialists don't want to
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, like I had just sort of found out in my LinkedIn workshop how recruiters can actually turn off the picture of your LinkedIn profile to avoid
Yes.
discrimination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to talk on that a little bit? Do you have LinkedIn Recruiter?
I do have LinkedIn Recruiter, and I actually just recently learned about that, that you can turn it off, and I love that. I think it's great. So yeah, I mean that I haven't got to play with that yet. I haven't got to do it because I was in the middle of a hunt at that time, so I was just doing it. But I think it's a great tool, and I think it's smart. I think I like it. Like you
Yeah.
said, I feel like that's like an aspect that recruiters don't want to have to deal with. It's nice to just be able to just kind of turn that off and look at the writing.
Yeah, and just see who they are as a talent,
Exactly.
as a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that obviously answered his question. He said, thank you. Does
Mhm.
anybody else have any questions about the header? Maybe what they could add or couldn't add? I have seen people, I suppose one thing that you could do after your last name is put any really heavy certifications that you have, that, or maybe MBA, some sort of an acronym that relates to professional certifications or education. I've seen people put that after their last name, and that's fine too. Any other questions as far as the header goes? I'll take that as no. All right, so moving on. The next area that we're looking at is the professional summary. And this is the place where you really start to grab the reader's attention with the idea that they want to continue reading your resume. And what we're looking at here is 1, 2, potentially 3 different ways that you could present yourself in this area. For those of you out there that are as seasoned as I am, you might remember going to buy a newspaper. Nobody does that anymore. But when you would go buy a newspaper and you would go to that little thingy where they had the newspaper on it, the newspaper would be folded. What we're looking at here is what we call above the fold. And this is the area of the resume, or in the old case, a newspaper, where you'd be able to look at it and see the headline or see the best stuff that a person wants to talk about, with the idea then that they'll want to go look at the rest of the resume. So there's a lot of different ways that you could present this information. Right now, the one trend is where it says international business professional. This is sort of the job title that you're pursuing. So that way the recruiter can see right away the job title that you're pursuing. And then underneath it, you potentially have some keywords that align with international business. As you can see here with this one, The PMP certification is right at the top of the resume. The top secret security clearance is right at the top of the resume. So if you have any really hard hitting certs that you know the company is going to want, then you're going to want to put it in this summary area. As far as even if it's a security clearance and not necessarily top secret, I love the idea of putting it at the very top, because what it tells me as somebody that's potentially hiring you is that you've had a background check done on you before. You have been cleared before. So as a result, I don't necessarily, I'm still probably going to do it, but I have a good idea that you're probably going to make it through our vetting process. And as a result, you're going to be a good hire. So whether you have just a secret or a top secret, I highly recommend putting it at the top of your resume. The next one where it says career summary, this one is in a little bit more of a paragraph type format. It's still loaded with a lot of great keywords. They're probably relevant to the direction the person is going in their career. I would probably say a lot of times when it's a super long paragraph, the recruiter's not going to read it. They don't necessarily have the time to read long paragraphs. So if you are going to go paragraph, I'd probably say 3 or 4 lines at the max. And then our third sort of option is by having competencies or skill sets that align with what you want to do. And then those skill sets would change based on the vacancy announcement and the job that you're pursuing. Regardless, you're always going to want to tailor your resume to match the job that you're applying for. And by having these sort of core competencies is a great way to move in content and move out content that's not relevant, not relevant, etc. Katie, do you have any comments on the summary section? And then what we're actually going to do right now is we're going to go look at some examples of what a summary might look like and discuss them.
Yeah, I definitely do. So I love the summary section. Just like Scott said, I like that it is basically, think of it as like the elevator pitch of the resume, I feel like, because that's where I'm going to go to be like, what are the highlights? Like tell me all the stuff, all the good stuff I want to know. Tell me the keywords that were in that job description. See if they're in there. Like if it was for top secret security, make sure that's in there. If I wanted you to, be Security Plus certified, make sure you have that in there. Put that stuff in there for sure. And anything else you think that would help. I can say right now, down here with the skills and competencies, to a recruiter, that's the jackpot. When I look at a resume and I see that they have skills and competencies laid out just like that, where it's very easy to read, it's bulleted just like that, and it's right by the summary, that is jackpot for me. You just made my job a lot easier, and I want to keep reading because I'm like, oh, thank you. Okay, I know kind of what you're good at. I know what you're looking for. I know what you're interested in. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this other one. Yeah.
So this is how you think like a recruiter. Like, did you hear?
Yeah.
Like saying, yes, please do it like this.
Yes.
And that's how you think like a recruiter. All right. So let's kind of go away from the slides for a moment. We'll go in here maybe. And I'm just gonna, obviously we're going to look at different styles of resumes. So I'm just kind of opening this one randomly just to see what the summary looks like. And to be absolutely honest, I'm not even certain what it's going to look like. Not his. We'll go back to his in a minute. Let's see here. Is it opening up? So this one here, so this is sort of an example of what Katie was saying. She's kind of like, yes, I like this. To me, I think there could potentially be a little bit more of an introduction, so to speak. Maybe 3 lines of paragraph kind of describing how much experience you have in the area. But what do you think when you sort of see this one?
I feel, were you talking to me, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. you scroll down just a little bit, just so I can see like a little bit more of like the
We're
bigger.
we're not worried about the experience section yet. We'll get to that.
Oh, okay. I
Right
got
now,
you.
we're just
Okay.
kind of worried about this sort of,
Okay.
this sort of
Okay.
right up here is what we're looking at right now is
Okay,
this.
I got you. Okay, so what I think personally for me, I want kind of what we saw on the last slide. I want something above where you have those bullet points, kind of giving me your elevator pitch. That's where I want it, Scott. Yes, right
Like
there.
right here where it said
Yes.
something like 10 or 20 years of experience, blah, 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 blah.
Yes. I want, like you said, I want that. You said it perfectly. Think like newspaper. Think of, I mean, I know my high school, one of my high school writing teachers, he said, you want that woo statement to where someone's like, oh, yes. Like I want to keep reading. That's what I want to see right there. I want to see you telling me why I should keep looking and reading all of those words that are down there. You need to sway me to keep reading all those words. So
now what about this one? So once again, to me, this from here all the way up here, that's sort of the summary. But when I see this one, I'm almost like, okay, that's a little too much.
Yeah, that's too much. That's too much for my eyes. Like I said, I mean, if I'm being totally honest here, like I read so many resumes and I see so many every day, all day, that if I see this, I'm like, oh, I'm immediately like, this is gonna take me a minute. So I'll like probably put it to the side to where I have more time. And I'll be like, I'll come back to it and I'll read it. Or it just depends on, I guess, kind of too, how many I've read that day. But that's a lot. That's really wordy. I feel like it can be a lot more concise, to the point. Yeah.
And what if it looked like this? So basically the same concept, but a little less wordy. And the other thing I want us to notice is how the font is different. Now, I personally think this is still a little too long.
Yeah, agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
I love the area of expertise. I like the area of excellence, but I do kind of like it to be a little bit more tabbed out the way this one is.
Yes.
Versus kind of written in a series of things. This is okay. I'm wondering if, once again, as a recruiter and as you are spending so much time on a resume, could you potentially look past this, the security clearance, because you're kind of flying through it so quickly?
Oh yeah, because that should be at the very top. That should be up where it says process improvement, building effect. Like I feel like it should be right up there at the very top. And I think the summary should be more of a concise, definitely a lot more concise, and that's where your security clearance should be in there as well, because I'm going to need to know that right away, because it could exclude you or include you right away on different projects. Like, and that's another thing, like depending on your security clearance, I might not need you for what you applied for, but I might say, oh, but he has this and I need that for this other job. So I'm going to, I'll reach out to him and say, hey, can I actually put your resume in this for this rec? So having that in there somewhere up top, because like you said, I could easily look that over.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's look at one more real quick. Get your opinion on.
Do you mind me asking a question real quick?
Absolutely. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Raymond.
this is Charles.
Or Charles? Okay.
That's all right. Just saying, my question is the font, because I had my resume. Well, I had someone create it for me. Of course, I have to go through and fix it up, but the font was I think it was like a Times New Roman, where it kind of looks like it's got the fancy stuff on it. Or should I try to go towards an Arial? I mean, what is as in a recruiter, does that matter? And the second question, before I just let you talk, is the colors. Does the colors either make something stick out, or does it make you like, that's too much, move to the next one? Over.
Yeah. I'll let Katie handle this.
Yeah, I think those are excellent questions. So your first question, well, okay, for the colors, I can tell you right now, For me personally, like the one that Scott just had pulled, like this one, I feel like it's just too much for my eyes, just because I see so many every day. So for me, I'm just like, it's a little over the top, even though it might not seem like it to you, but to me, I would like it a little bit more streamlined. Like I like just black and white, but I don't mind if there's a little color. It's okay if there's a little color. But like the middle chunk that it's like highlighted, I don't know if that's really necessary. And then as far as the font, I love Times New Roman, and I don't mind Arial. I don't think. Can you pull one up of Arial, Scott? Do you have one?
So this one is, so take a look at this resume. I'd love to get your thoughts sort of on this one. It
Okay.
doesn't necessarily have that sort of introductory type thing, but it's loaded topside with skill sets. This one is Calibrari, which is very close to being the same as Arial.
Yeah.
We actually have a slide coming up that's going to talk about serif versus sans serif.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, we could definitely talk about it now while we're kind of looking at samples of some resumes, but this is sans serif, I think.
Okay.
Whereas this one,
Because it doesn't have the
here,
feet, right?
yeah, it doesn't have what we call the tails.
Oh, the
But
tails. Okay.
tails, feet, same sort
Okay.
of thing. So we'll talk about that obviously a little bit more, but kind of to your eyes, which one do you tend to? Which one?
I
kind
like
of
this
look-
one.
just
So I
kind of-
like, yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I honestly don't mind the font as long as it's something kind of like what we're talking about, something similar. So if it's like what did you say this one's called that I'm looking at?
I get them mixed up.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. I like this. I like,
It's
yeah,
block print.
okay. Yeah. I like this. I like Times New Roman, as long as it's not like Comic Sans or, something else that's a little bit more unprofessional. I don't mind it. I love how this resume is set up, because to me, it's like no nonsense. This is the meat and the potatoes. There's no fluff. I can see immediately what you're into, what you've done, what your core competencies are. I love it. And I love when see how in the middle they have like process improvement, turnaround, strategic leadership, I love those little bullet points kind of in the headers. This color is fine for me. I don't mind. So I saw somebody ask the question, do I prefer black or white, or do I prefer color? And I don't mind color if it's laid out like this, because I feel like it's not as overwhelming, because it's not so wordy and it's kind of blocked up and it's chunked. I'm a big chunk person, so you probably will hear me referring to that as a while. I like looking at things in chunks, especially when you look at a lot of resumes every day. It's easier if you've done the work for me and chunked it out and made it easy for me to process.
Awesome. Okay. We'll come back to these resumes again. Go back to our slides real quick. All right. So I want to make sure that I got the name right. Amanda, thank you for helping us out with the difference between serif and sans serif. I am a fan of sans serif then. Okay, let's go. So any other questions related to the summary and the top part of our resume? Like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. I had somebody ask, are there templates available? At the end of our workshop, I'm going to show you exactly where I have uploaded some resumes that you could use as a template, and it's on our Airmen and Family Readiness Center website, Prescott Air Force Base. So I'll show you that.
Hey, Scott, I had a quick question about the security clearance part.
Yes, sir.
So you guys are both talking about the importance of mentioning that sort of upfront, and I saw the one example of the individual talking about their expired top secret. If someone has an active secret but previously held a top secret, is that worth putting in there that they previously had the top secret or not?
I'm thinking. I've never seen that. I've never seen somebody put that on a resume. So I've never, I guess I can't say I've experienced on how I would feel about it. But if you have a secret in my head, I mean, I feel like you've at least, had background checks. And so I feel like there's definitely a possibility that you could obtain it if your role or position that you're going for would require it. I don't know. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I was really just looking at, as we move throughout the military and, our requirements are different. And that's my example. I held a top secret previously, and then my follow-on position didn't require it. So government didn't want to pay to continue it. So my top secret, instead of expiring, basically downgraded back to a secret. So I just wasn't sure if that would actually come across as a negative because it was a previously held, or just leave it a secret and go with that.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'll say and then I would love to hear what Scott has to say too after I'm done. But I would leave it, you can put top secret, and you can say expired on whatever date, because I'll tell you what, if it's somebody like me who works with military, and anybody, a lot of recruiters are used to that too. They understand that you didn't lose it probably not because of something you did. It just lapsed, right? Or you just, like you said, you didn't need it for a job. Like we already know that. So I don't think it would look bad. Yeah, I don't know. Scott, what do you think? Have you seen that? Have you seen anybody put that on a resume? I haven't.
Not really. I would probably say I would rather just tell me what clearance you're cleared for at this moment than what you were cleared for before. Because if I saw, okay, the person used to have a top secret security clearance and the new job required a TS, I think that the company would still have to go through the process of getting it upgraded and updated it anyway. So I don't see how it would carry much weight. I would probably recommend just putting what you currently have. Exactly. And then like Raymond just said here, ask your security manager for exact security so that you can list it correctly. I think that's a wise idea. But I think as a hiring manager, they probably wouldn't care that you used to have one.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say,
that makes sense. Yeah.
I had a top secret security clearance when I was in the Navy back in 1988, but what weight does that carry now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're still going to have to pay to have you, or get you up to speed. So yeah,
Right.
You're right. Yeah.
So that's how I see it. Is Mark still around? I was kind of looking through our participants and I didn't see Mark in here anymore.
I think he said he had to go. He had something on his schedule that he didn't know he had.
I was going to have him provide some insight. Do I have anybody else out there that is sort of in the recruiting industry that might have some insight on that or thoughts? I'll take that as a no. All right, so let's move on. All right, so now we're going to go into your professional experience. And this is most likely however, I mean, I suppose if you had a functional style resume, it would tend to be the same thing. But for most part, it's for those individuals that have put together a chronological style resume. I'm more of a fan of a chronological style resume more than anything else. And we're going to talk about those different formats later. But in this area, this is where you're really kind of describing what it is that you have done in your career and in your current job or past job. In a perfect world, you're doing it sort of in a STAR type of approach where it's situation, task, action, result. The thing is that we want here is we really want you to start out with strong action verbs. As I'm looking at clients' resumes throughout my years, I often see them saying the same action verbs over and over. Managed, led, managed, managed, supervised, led, managed, supervised, led, managed. Okay, so literally all you need to do is Google search strong action verbs for resumes, and you'll get some unique things that you could start your bullet statement out with besides using the same thing over and over. Another thing I want you to do is really look at the industry keywords. Assuming that most of us are in service or have been in service, we're used to the industry keywords of being active duty. I want you to step out and take a look at the industry keywords that are in the civilian sector as we're talking about a civilian or corporate style resume. And this can actually be done very simple. We're going to away from the slides here. Bear with me. So if I go to my good friend Google, and depending on my industry while I was active duty, what I'm going to do as this slowly opens is I'm going to type in logistics resume example. And then I'm going to search. I feel like I'm talking slow because my computer's going slow. And then I'm going to jump over to images. And what we're going to get is we're going to get images of logistics resumes. What I want you to do is look at those resumes, look at the content that's in those resumes, and you're going to see the words that civilians are using in writing a logistical style resume. The other nice thing about doing this is there might be a resume style that stands out to you. And then all you need to do is sort of mimic or make that style of resume yourself. So as it slowly loads,
Hey, Scott, I'll give you a minute.
go ahead.
Quick thing that I found out that because I've been trying to mess with mine is that, so I have a company that I'm trying to, apply for, and they have leadership principles. And so what I've done is got those leadership principles and try to just not really sneak them into my resume, but to place them in my resume. So when they read it, they say, oh, well, at least I know he's looking, at this or that, and using keywords and their principles when they're looking at that. Over.
I absolutely love that idea. Once again, as you're tailoring your resume to match up, not just to a specific job, but tailoring your resume to match up to the company culture is highly recommended. So, as we're looking at these resumes, I haven't opened them up yet and I'm not going to, but like this one doesn't look horrible. This one looks okay. I don't mind this one and I don't mind this one. Over here is sort of here are two of them with a person's picture in it. But bottom line is I'm going to try to open. As you can see here, these sort of skills and attributes, this is where we're really going to find the industry keywords. Let's see what happens when I open this up. And once again, these are all people where you would pay to have them write your resume. But by going to look at the examples of what they have to offer, you're just kind of using the template that they've created, build it in a Word document yourself, and then move forward with it. So with that said, one of the things, like if we're talking about logistics, that people do is they spell logistics, they spell material wrong in the military. It's not MATRIEL, it's AL. So once again, just kind of understanding those little bit of things. Like right here is logistics, over here supply chain, supply technician. So you could get a really good idea as to what resumes would look like in the industry that you're going into that doesn't have the military jargon. But as I look at this, and I'm just going to, since we're here, if you look at this resume, he's provided a little bit of scope talking about how many people, he has managed or directed, but there's no accomplishments here. It reads straight job description. Achieved multiple awards for best district. Well, give me a little bit more maybe about what those awards are. At least here in 2007, he was Employee of the Month. But if he promoted and enhanced customer service, what was the outcome of that? Can you quantify it? And that's what we're talking about in a STAR approach. Go back to the slides. Is what is the result? What is the so what factor in the bullet that you have written out? Next is consistency. A lot of times when I look at resumes, they're inconsistent. That could mean they talk past tense and then they talk present tense. It could mean they put periods at the end of their bullet statement, and then the next bullet statement, there's not a period. If they're talking dollars, they might put big K, and then in the next bullet statement, they spelled it out to 1,000 or million or whatever it might be. You got to remain consistent throughout your entire resume. And I'm going to let Katie talk about what she sees as far as consistency goes as well. And then finally, less is more. Sometimes you can cut out the word the, and there's like little words that you can sort of cut out to make that bullet statement a little bit more concise and read to the point. I don't want you to go to the extreme of writing an EPR, OPR, where you're abbreviating everything and it just doesn't read properly. But sometimes you can remove words that makes it concise and a little bit more easy to read. So Katie, what do you often see that is a hindrance as far as maybe action verb, industry, mainly consistency, or less being more? Do I have you here?
She's on mute.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. My dog was barking, so I went on mute.
Okay.
And then I forgot. But yeah, so I see a lot of people can't decide if they want periods on bullet points or not. So I'll see some periods on a bullet point and then like not period, no period. And that doesn't really bother me too much, but I mean, I guess I notice it. So even though it doesn't bother me, I notice it. The font, don't change the font. Like if you don't change, like be consistent with your font. Use the same font all throughout. I mean, it's okay. I feel like it is okay to like bold certain words, bold certain headings. That's fine. That doesn't bother me, but make it the same font so it's not so distracting and it makes you seem a little unorganized, well, very unorganized. If it's not well tailored like that, I would say.
That sounds good. Okay, good. All right. So some examples. Oops. This is sort of an example of a STAR approach, so to speak. One of the great things about being in service and being evaluated every year is our accomplishments are actually written out for us. What we really need to do then is demilitarize it and then massage them into our resume. But the example that we have here is an old system that was used for fixing, was out of date. What their task was to make it manageable, provide updates, and and increase the efficiency of it. So their action was they performed data re-engineering tools, they analyzed, and they restructured the entire system within 6 months. And then that final result is it reduced the time spent by 20% and it increased productivity by 35%. Now, if we wrote out the entire STAR, that would take up like half of our resume. So what we really need to do is we really need to make it more streamlined and concise into a 1 or 2 line bullet statement. Please don't think that the bullet statements in your resume must be 1 line. It's totally okay if they're 2 lines. I would waiver saying 3 lines. At 3 lines, it tends to be more of a paragraph, even if it has a bullet in front of it. So with this state, it says restructured. I would probably take out the word vital. I'd probably say restructured, outdated software system with 180 days, reduce working time 20% and increase productivity 35% and be done with it. So this is so much better than just saying you updated an old system and then there's no numbers acquainted to what it is that you have done. The numbers tell the employer that what you have done in the past is going to show them what you're potentially going to do for them in the future. And if we're talking about increasing productivity, decreasing work time, saving money, increasing revenue, those are the things that companies want to see in a resume because it separates yourself from the competition. Now, as we talk about presenting our information, there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. The first way we're looking at is in a paragraph type format. A paragraph type format tends to take a little less space because you might not have a couple words trickle down into the second line of a bullet. But overall, the problem with using a paragraph style format is that the accomplishments don't necessarily stand out. They're all worked in together. What we're looking at here is an old version for those of you that are seasoned like I am. This is what an OPR or EPR used to look like back in the day. So let's sort of talk about not only how we present the information, but also demilitarization. So with that said, I did a workshop last week, and we had a couple of individuals that worked at Nestle Purina. They were younger. They've had no affiliation with the military at all. They had no idea what an NCOIC would be. So what we really need to do is take that acronym and put it in civilian terminology. So that way somebody that has no affiliation with the service would understand what an NCOIC would be. So we might put manager, comma, client support administrator. We might put supervisor. I'm not a big fan of the word superintendent. Typically in the civilian world, if you use the word superintendent, you often think about the education system, which obviously is not the direction we're necessarily going. In your resume, as far as dates, there's nothing wrong with just putting the years. Some people put month and year, which once again is totally fine. I just want you to be consistent. I have seen resumes where in one job they put the month and year, and then the next job they only put the years that they work there. So be consistent with that. As far as the 20th maintenance group, I really don't know what that means. Are there 100 maintenance groups in the military and you are the 20th? Or what does that mean exactly? You could probably get away with saying maintenance department or Shaw Air Force Base maintenance department. And then that would give me an idea that you're at Shaw Air Force Base and you work for the maintenance department. Next, as we look at the paragraph and we break it down, is it advantageous for you to put 3 managers and 4 airmen, or do you want to combine them and put 7 personnel? That's sort of your sort of thinking and dissecting. And do you want to tell them that you supervise managers as well as employees, and you want to kind of separate them apart from each other? Or can you just put that there's 7 of them? And I'm going to get Katie's feedback after I talk through this. The next one that I see here is over. I actually like the idea of putting a plus sign versus the word over. I think a plus being a symbol tends to stand out a little bit more than the word. Plus it saves you a little bit of space. MX, I actually don't know what MX means. Is it maintenance? Is it mission? I'm not quite sure. And is it even relevant to the jobs that I'm applying for? So I think it's maintenance. But does it matter that I'm supervising maintenance personnel does it matter that I'm providing support to maintenance personnel, or does it matter that I'm just providing support to 1,700 employees, regardless of what their function was? Perform, supervise, manage. So those are three words right here. To me, supervise and manage are essentially the same thing. And you already have supervise in the beginning part of this paragraph. So I would probably cut the word supervise and just say, I'd probably even switch it around and I'd say manage and perform software, hardware, tasks, da, 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 da. And then finally, I love the final statement where at least it does say increase productivity by 30%. So my friend Katie, as you sort of go over what this paragraph looks like, what stands out to you, what do you like, what do you don't like, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense?
Well, I mean, I'm just not really a big fan of the paragraph, but I know I already said that, but so boom, the paragraph. And then immediately when I see NCOIC, I mean, I can kind of break that down and figure it out, but at first I do have to kind of think about it because I've over 20 years, I was a military spouse, but it was with the Navy, right? So does this correlate with the Navy? I don't know. Does it mean the same thing it meant? And, like if it would have, I mean, that's just an example. It could be something else, but, and then client support, and then 20th maintenance group, same thing. I don't really know exactly what that means. Even though I have experience with military, being in the military community. Same. I don't know what MX stands for. I don't know what that means. So I'd have to be doing a lot of decoding if I'm looking at this. A lot of decoding. And I like instead of doing three, like 3 maintenance personnel and then like managers, like you said, I feel like just less is more. Just tell me that you are in charge of 7 personnel. And then I think anything else I would kind of figure out when I interviewed you.
But you don't have time to decode, right?
Yeah, I don't have time. I don't have time to decode. So it's just like, you're just making extra hurdles for me, which isn't really what you want to do with a recruiter. You want to make it a lot more easier to read and understand. So, yeah.
So this goes back to thinking like a recruiter, remember?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So let's look at, so this is the exact same content. It's just presented differently. So I'm assuming you like the way this looks a lot better.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I love this.
So we don't need to dissect it any more than that.
No.
This is sort of another way that you could present your information right here, where it's a short paragraph and then the accomplishments are bulletized. Once again, I'm okay with this if it's once again a super short paragraph. I like the idea of this because it does make your accomplishments stand out a little bit more. It's almost like, here's what I did, and then here's how well I did it. But once again, I really tend to believe you're much better off by going with straight bullet statements.
Agree, 100,000 bajillion %.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really like this. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, like you said, this is better than just a paragraph, but I like the other one.
All right. Any questions out there for how we're presenting our experience?
So my question is, what is the policy in regards to, like, if you look in this statement, so you've got one sentence that ends with a semicolon, then has another little piece to it. And then you've got some sentences that end with a period. What is the policy, or how is it looked at in regards to using the semicolon or period or what in that nature?
Is that for me?
I'm going to let you handle it.
Okay. Okay. So are you asking if we like semicolons or if we don't like semicolons? I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question.
Yeah, yes and no. Or I mean, yes, do you like it? Of course, because you're a recruiter, I want to know if you like it. but two is just, is there really a, because when I was doing my resume, I had places, because like OERs are the same thing. You throw a lot of semicolons and break things up. Is that looked as a positive or maybe not necessary?
Well, I don't know. I might be a strange recruiter. I love semicolons, but I'm kind of a grammar and spelling nerd. So like I like that kind of stuff. I like it. I understand it. It doesn't bother me at all. Yeah. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah, that's all I need to know so I could still use them.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's perfect. I like semicolons myself as well. That's just kind of me.
Yeah.
I like the idea, where it said provides assistance and training for members, semicolon, and then here's the accomplishment. It increased
Exactly.
productivity by 30%. It's almost like maybe you had a dash or something along those lines, but a semicolon is, to me, the way that I write resumes is sort of like, okay, here's what I did, and then here's the accomplishment for it. Let's jump away real quick. Let's go ahead and let's look at the examples of the way people have written sort of their experience section. Now, another thing that's bugging me with this person's resume is I personally don't like the idea that they put their education before their experience. And I'll get your insight on that as well. I think if he was straight out of college and he didn't have much work experience at all, then I would say, yes, go ahead and put your education first. But typically speaking, it should probably go at the bottom of your resume. Here he spelled February wrong, which is a no-no. And he's sort of gone the route of, well, actually, if let's take a look at, bear with me a moment. If we look at the before and how he had it laid out. So what do you think, Katie, when you see a laundry list of bullet statements like this?
It's just way too much. I'm not going to read through it. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not going to read through all of that. What I'll do is if I really am interested and you did all of this, I will look for my keywords. So like if I'm looking for you to have, Java experience, I'm only looking for the word Java. If I'm not, but other than that, I'm not gonna, it's just too much.
Okay, so what if it looked a little bit more, and I still think this is too much, but what if it looked a little bit more like this, where it's broken into segments?
So what they did was they just, so it's the same thing, but they just broke it up. So, okay, again, chunking, you chunked it for me. Thank you, but I still think it's too much. It's still too much. Yeah.
I tend to agree. Once again, and this is why you're tailoring your resume to match up to the jobs that you're pursuing. Because some of this content could potentially go out. So then let's jump over to Melissa's real quick. And then this is what her sort of work history experience section looks like, where it's, once again, yeah, it's sort of paragraph, but then there's bullets. But your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this this is her experience section. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Correct.
this isn't bad. I like that it's kind of a lot, but I like that because they are all differently. I like that she did give me a little bit of an overall, and then she gave me some bullet points. I like that. And I like that she chunked it very nicely.
Okay. So the keyword of the day is chunks.
Chunks. It's all about chunking. Chunk
Love
it for us. We appreciate the chunking.
I like that. Okay. So we'll come back to these in a moment. So once again, numbers separate yourself from the competition. I'm not going to go through this too terribly much. I think at this point you get the idea. Numbers, 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 numbers. Moving on, I already sort of discussed where you're going to put your formal education. Once again, let's say your background is in logistics and you just completed your degree as a social worker and you're going to pursue work in pursue employment in social work, then in that aspect, I'd probably say your formal education should go to the top. But typically speaking, for those of us that are here, your education is going to go towards the bottom part of your resume. Whether you break them down or you chunk them based on education, certifications, and specialized training, totally up to you how you present the information. If we look at this example that we have here, I would probably say, let's remove that associate's degree. It's in logistics. Your master's degree is in criminal justice. They don't align with each other. It's just taking up space. You're only going to give them what they need. So in that aspect, I would say, remove that. Once again, in your specialized training, I would probably only put relevant specialized training to the direction that you're moving towards. If they don't understand and if it doesn't align, I would totally leave it out of your resume, but go ahead and put it in your LinkedIn profile. There might be something there that stands out to them as they're kind of vetting you through your LinkedIn profile that stands out, but really make this concise to what it is that you're pursuing. And then finally, as far as certifications go, once again, you should know the industry. So if it's super relevant and you really believe it's going to put you over the top with your competition, then move it to the top part of your resume. Any thoughts as you look at education, certification, specialized training, et cetera, that stand out to you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what you're going to say, but I
Go ahead.
feel like it kind of drives me crazy that education is all the way at the bottom. Like
Oh,
that
really?
kind of,
Okay, good.
yeah, that drives me crazy because what I find myself doing all day is with my mouse, just going, just to scroll down really quick, because that's the first piece of information I need to know for a lot of my recs. So for me, it's kind of annoying because I'm like, oh, I know they put it at the bottom. So then I have to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And then I go back to the top and then I start over because I have to see, first of all, do they meet the minimum requirements that, that go on, that are attached to this rec? So for me, it's kind of annoying. Are you going to yell at me?
No, not at all. It like literally was sort of an eye opener to me. So I understand what you're saying. So like if a person is looking at a vacancy announcement and one of the qualifications or one of the mandatories is a bachelor's degree, then you want it up on top.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah.
No,
I want it like right at the top. That way I'm not constantly scrolling down the bottom. That's like one of my pet peeves, like all day. But then, but I know you're right. There, everybody puts them at the bottom and I'm just constantly like scroll, get to the bottom and go back to the top.
That's it. You're cut off. This workshop is over with. No, I'm kidding. No, I think that's very insightful. I never really thought of it that way, but as I analyze it and think deeper on it, you're absolutely correct. I mean, if one of the requirements for the job is a bachelor's degree, then why not have it at the top of the resume? So that way you can see that box is checked as they moved on to everything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So what about GPAs? What are your thoughts about having a GPA in a resume?
I don't care. No, I don't, it doesn't, you can put it in there. It's not going to bother me if you put it in there, but I really don't need it. I don't need it.
What about you don't meet the degree, but you have the experience? This is actually something really important for you to talk about as a recruiter, because I sort of hear about it all the time. If I'm looking at a vacancy announcement and the requirements is a bachelor's degree in basket weaving, it doesn't matter what it's in, you just have to have a bachelor's degree. Is there any wiggle room?
So there is one situation that I have come across where I know that there is wiggle room, but however, there are certain resumes I will send to other recruiters that I know they have a rec that I have somebody who has a great resume and I'm like, they've got great. And I'll send it and they're like, no, we can't. They don't have a bachelor's or they don't have this. I'm like, but they have experience. And they're like, it's a hard stop. No, I can't. But I also know that there are other positions, like some of them that I do, where if they're coming, say, from like the outside or like external hire, then they have to have a bachelor's. but if they go through certain training programs. So if you have a certain training program, they can say, oh, well, we can waive that requirement for a bachelor's because they have this training documented that they have it done, so we can waive it. So there are times where there is some wiggle room there.
Right, yeah, so, yeah, it just kind of depends. Would you put degree in summary paragraph and then still put it at the bottom? I kind of think that's a little bit redundant. As I'm having this conversation with Katie, I'd probably say just move your education to the top.
Yes, of course, I definitely, I support that.
Instead of having it in both places, the summary and
yes.
in the bottom.
Yes.
Just move it up to the top.
Yeah, one and done.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
We're good. We're friends.
Okay, good. Oh, thank goodness.
All right. So other areas you can add to your resume, you can talk about technology that you use, once again, if it lines, and equipment that you use if it lines. Honors and awards. What do you think if you saw Civilian of the Quarter or Airman of the Year, or does that speak to you in any way?
Sometimes it does, because it'll tell me if you get along well with teammates. It'll tell me if you, if your leaders recognize certain traits in you. So sometimes it does matter, especially if I know specifically which team that you're being, that I'm, going to be recommending you for, if I know how they work, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And then we already discussed certificates. I have seen people put testimonials in their resume, so-and-so, what somebody else has said about you or written about you. I'm not sure that would put you over the top. I think, like, for me, maybe like if I was applying for a job as a resume writer, then the testimonials of what some people thought of my resume writing abilities, that might come into play. I think once again, it's sort of understanding the industry and how a testimonial could potentially put you over the top, but generally speaking, I probably wouldn't do that. Publications, committees, volunteerism, once again, if they align with the company culture, through doing your research on the organization, then you could definitely put those areas into your resume. If not, just go ahead and put them in your LinkedIn profile, and an individual would then be able to see it when they're kind of scrolling through and looking at your LinkedIn profile. Any
Agree.
thoughts on additional areas that you like to see in a resume, or it all goes back to relevancy?
Yeah, I would say relevancy and certifications. I feel like if you have, especially say if you're going for something that is not acting like I'm just going to use Java again as an example. It's maybe not a Java role, right? Where you don't need to have a heavy knowledge of Java or any kind of digital platform, but it's still in the realm of IT, right? Let's just say it's that. Put that in there, because even though, you might not need it, because sometimes I'm amazed at somebody didn't put a certain certification in there, and then I'll be interviewing them and talking to them, and then they'll just mention it nonchalantly. And I'm like, that's amazing. Why didn't you have that on your resume? I needed to know that, because maybe you're even better for this other position that I know about. So if it's even somewhat related, I would definitely put it in there. Same thing. I agree with you on the testimonials. But publications, there was one time recently where somebody did put their publications, and they were a communications strategist. So it made complete sense that they gave me those links, and it's helpful. So I feel like in those, like he knew his audience, he knew the role he was going for, he knew what type of position he wanted. So that, I think that was smart. Definitely always put your affiliations on your LinkedIn, like Scott said, and then sometimes put them on your resume. For example, me, when I was looking for this position, I knew that my experience as a Navy ombudsman, my experience as a family member employment assistant, communications assistant, working on a Marine Corps base, I knew that those those experiences were beneficial to kind of like the culture, like Scott was saying, to the position that I was going for. And I knew that they would appreciate that and they would value that because they knew that it did correlate with the role. So definitely always put that in there. Like Scott said, if you think that it is a good fit.
Awesome. Okay. So we're about ready to take a quick break. We've gone 90 minutes already and people might need to stand up and stuff, but there's one question that I wanted to cover real quick before we take our break. If you have a BS and an MS in the same field, should you only put the MS? Scott would probably say no, put both of them. What are your thoughts, Katie?
And they're both in the same.
Yeah, they're both in the same.
I would say put them both.
Yeah. I don't
Because if
think-
it was me and it was my resume, I'd put both.
yeah, I think put both of them.
Yeah,
So we agree with that. At least we agree on one thing.
I know. Yeah, thank goodness. No one can kick me out.
Right. Okay. So we are at 1:31 my time. Let's come back at 1:40 and we'll continue on. I think we're halfway through the training and we'll go from there. So let's take 9 minutes. All right, I am back.
Hey, Scott,
Hi,
question for you. This is Will.
I will.
Hey, to set up a little bit of one-on-one time with you, like at the Airman Family Readiness Center, is there a best way to do so?
Yeah, probably shoot me an email.
Okay,
I'm gonna put my email address in here now.
all right.
And shoot me an email, then I'll take a look at my schedule and we can set something up. And for those individuals that aren't in the Scott Air Force Base area, we can certainly set up a Zoom call to kind of go over your resume as well. As people are slowly coming back. The way I like to do it is I like to pull up the resume and go through it from top to bottom and make real life changes together. So that way, not only do you leave with something better that you came in with, but I also always find that it's sort of a learning experience. And as we're going through adjustments and changes in the resume, my clients start to be like, hey, why don't we do this? Or maybe we try that, or should we do this? It's like almost they start to take over the process, which is great because you should be tailoring your resume to match up to every job anyway. So to get an understanding of how to do that works best. So with that said, go ahead and shoot me an email and then I'll set something up with you. And then obviously, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, simple search Scott Rather and you'd be able to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I do see the question about 1 page or 2 pages. We will go ahead and discuss that in a moment. So Neil, yes. So if you go to, hopefully give me a couple minutes. Hopefully everybody is back and they can see this. I'm going to move away from the slides real quick. Oops. If you go to scottafrc.com, that's our website at Scott Air Force Base for the Airman and Family Readiness Center. And then you're going to scroll to employment assistance. And then we're going to go to workshop slides and handouts. Here's the slides that we're looking at today. And then there's several example resumes, as well as an example of a cover letter. We're going to talk about ATS resumes in a little bit. So there's an example for that. Those people that are wondering what an NCOIC should be called in the civilian sector, what a wing should be called, or a battalion should be called in the civilian sector, we have this. And then we also have a verb list, strong action verbs that you could use. And then all the other workshops that I have in my repertoire that I have to offer. Neil, before you go, on March 2nd, we will be providing a LinkedIn workshop. It's going to be at night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central Time. It'll be myself as well as some other people that are in the recruiting career coaching field as well. Take a look for that. And then we'll be going there. So yeah, a nighttime LinkedIn. It'll be BYOB.
That's awesome.
That'll be fun. All right. So yeah, so great resources here that we have on our website. If you jump over to my hands-on LinkedIn workshop, We talked about industry keywords. Right here are industry buzzwords, depending on the career field that you're thinking about. My personal brand canvas that will help you in developing your own personal brand. And then these are some statements that other people have used as far as a tagline that you could build off of to create your own tagline. All right, welcome back, everybody. So what we're going to do is we're going to move forward and we're going to talk about delivery type. We're not going to talk about portfolio and video. There are two different areas that a potential person could look at. We're going to focus on scannable and presentation. We're also going to look at arrangement. What's the difference between a chronological, a functional, and a combination? So the first one thing that we're looking at is a chronological style resume. And basically, this is a resume that has been consolidated down so that way I could show you the resume on a PowerPoint slide. Typically speaking, because the question did come up, your resume is going to be 1 to 2 pages long. Katie, are you okay with the 2-page resume?
I'm okay with it. Yeah, just definitely not longer. I'm definitely okay with 2 pages, but just not anything longer. I got one a few days ago that was 8 pages long. And yeah, I was like, wow, this is too much. Yeah. So, but I'm okay with 2. 2 is totally okay. So try not to go past 2.
Okay, perfect. All right. So a chronological resume is starting from your most recent position and working backwards. It can go back potentially 10 to 15 years. If you are in the military and you've been in service for over 20 years, I like the idea of putting United States Air Force and then in parentheses 2020 or 2000 to 2022 or to present or something like that. So that way you're telling them I've been in the Air Force since 2020, but you're only getting 10 to 15 years of my work history. So that's the way that I tend to like to do. The example we're looking at here is obviously an individual that was a straight civilian, but it's in a chronological format. The advantages of this is that it's easy to follow. It shows your career and it is the preferred style of a resume by recruiters. The disadvantages of this is that it doesn't necessarily emphasize your skills. It highlights the gaps of employment. Fortunately, for those of us that are in service, we don't necessarily have gaps of employment, so it's not going to be a big issue. And then the third thing, well, yeah, it could be long, but if you decide you're going to cut yourself off before it goes beyond 2 pages, then you're going to be totally fine. So you're going to be using this when you have a solid work history, potentially for those individuals that are sort of mid-level to executive in their profession. And for those individuals that are more of a career specialist. And what we mean by a career specialist is somebody that is doing the work, and then that's the type of employment they're going to be seeking in their next job. So it's not like they're going from logistics to social work, where there's this big pivot. So this is the realm that we're going for. Those most people that are active duty, this is probably the style that you're going to want to use. And I emphasize the word probably. Is this sort of your favorite style of what you'd like to see?
Oh yeah, this is like perfect right here. Like this is everything. It's got the skills at the top. I wish the education was at the top because look, I have to scroll all the way to the bottom.
It's just a 1-page resume. You don't have to scroll that
That's
bad.
That's true. Okay.
Right,
I still,
right.
but yeah. So no, it's great. This is good because it's got the bullet points. It's not too wordy. Yeah.
What if a person was in the military for 20 years and they had a 1-page resume like this? Would it be enough for you to be like, you know what? I think I want to talk to this person?
You mean if they kept it at one page?
If they kept it at one page, but they have 20 years of work experience.
Yeah, yeah, I would still contact them. I mean, typically I feel like, oh, I know this is a civilian one we're looking at, but yeah, I definitely would. Yeah.
Because I know that the thought is, how can I potentially get 10, 15, 20 years of content
Yeah.
and cram it into one page?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, which I understand and I respect. If we look at this person's resume, it's about 8 years, maybe 10 years of, it's still 10 years of experience, really. I mean, if we thought the fact that, you know, it's 2022 and she started her profession in 2012, I mean, it's still 10 years of content put on one page.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, and that's why I definitely don't mind the 2-page, but I know especially for the service members that I come in contact with, if I mean, I know just because I'm used to this lifestyle, I know how it is. So typically if I wanted to know more, basically, I would just schedule a one-on-one. And I would say, look, I'm definitely still interested. Let me just schedule a one-on-one because this is probably a lot for him to put on a resume. So.
Okay. Perfect. So the next arrangement is called a functional style resume. And the functional style resume focuses more on your skills than it does your work history. It puts your work history sort of in the background. So as we look at this example, it's the same individual. It's just the content is presented in a different manner. We don't know, as we look at their professional experience, what time frame happened. We just know that these are the things that they have done. And then down below, we have your employment history, where you worked, and the job title that you held. So this type of resume is really good if you're trying to hide employment gaps. I would argue professionals like Katie would be able to see right through that without any problem and be like, why are they giving me this style of resume? I'll let her comment in a moment. But the one thing I do tend to like about it is it tends to highlight transferable skills. So let's say, once again, your background was logistics, you're moving into the social services industry, and you're looking back at your experience. And while you're in the field of logistics, you might have coached and mentored professionals. You might have provided some sort of career counseling. You've done training and development, and you kind of talk about your human employment type skills. And you don't necessarily want that buried all the way down to the bottom. This is a way to kind of put it all together without necessarily showing that it's scattered throughout your career, and they would be able to just encapsulate it all together. The problem with this is, once again, it's not very common. It tends to stand out to the recruiter, like, why did they decide to give me this style of resume versus a chronological resume? So while it has its advantages, I think it has more disadvantage than anything else. So over to you, Katie. When you get a resume that looks something like this, what are your thoughts?
Definitely same thing. Pretty much exactly what you said. I would be kind of confused, and I'd be like, why did they do this? I would rather just see a regular chronological, because even if there are gaps, especially like I get a lot from military spouses. I am a military spouse, so if I see gaps, and again, at the end of the day, I'm human. So I have feelings. And so when I see a gap, I'm like, there's probably an explanation. So let me see if the experiences that they do have, are they relevant and valid towards this role that they're wanting to get. And if I'm curious about those gaps, then I will schedule a one-on-one and I will find out why there's gaps there. I don't really like this, because I feel like you're kind of trying to trick me or something. And I'd rather just you be upfront and just have it all laid out for me.
That's awesome. Okay. Let's see here. I had a question and then I lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah, it's Friday. It's okay.
Okay. All right. So moving on, the next style of arrangement that we could do is a con style. And I kind of like to call this the best of both worlds. And what it does is it allows you to focus on the content that's relevant to the job that you're applying for, but yet at the same time, you're giving them the chronological work history that they desire. So with here, selected accomplishments, marketing, community relations, and then also you're giving the work history, and then of course, education, or in this case, now that we're friends with Katie, we're going to move our education to the top. But what are your thoughts on this style if you saw it?
Yeah, this is good. I don't mind this at all. It doesn't bother me. And I love, like I said, I'm telling you, this is the money. This is money right up here. Having the key skills, the key proficiencies up there. Oh, a happy dance every time I see that, and just makes it a lot easier. Yeah, and it's easy on the eyes. A lot of chunking going on here. I like it.
All right, good. So let's take a look at one. Well, let's go back to Melissa's, because Melissa's is a little bit the same. So she does have highlights of performance. And what we did here is we sort of took her greatest hits, despite of whenever they happened, and moved them to the top of the resume. And then it's sort of broken down into skill sets, but we also give the work history. Now, here's my thought as we're going through things, and this is why this is such a learning experience. Even for me, that's been in this industry for such a long time. I almost think it might be most advantageous, and you can agree or disagree, if this work history was moved up before professional experience. I don't mind the highlights of performance. It gives you a quick snapshot of some that she's done, and then going into the work history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my when as you started scrolling down, I was like, why isn't that up towards the top? Like up higher than the professional experience.
The
I
work history,
agree.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you like something along the lines of highlights of performance or selected accomplishments?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, keep going.
Yeah. Highlights of performance. They're good. I like that. I'm not sure about the professional because the work history is down, right? She still has that on
Yeah,
there?
so the work history is now on the second page.
Okay, so see, yeah, that should be up. That should be up a lot higher. I don't really see why the can you go up a little bit?
Destruction.
Yeah, the professional experience. I don't know if that's really necessary, but if you do want to have that in there, I would put it last, because I'm definitely more with the work experience. Like I want to know
More worried about their work history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, work history. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. And then of course, now that we've had this discussion,
Yes.
Katie, the formal education needs to go to the top.
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Charles. Just give it a little thing.
Yeah.
I would almost think there's duplication there as well. And if you're putting all that professional experience, it's supposed to be in your work history. So there's probably duplication that's putting a lot of words that, that a recruiter doesn't want to see, so I don't know if that's any input.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
I love the input, actually. I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Overkill. There's a lot here, right? So, could this whole section actually even be removed? And then you just go straight into work history, and maybe the work history is spread out a little bit more, so that way it's easier to read. That's something that you could look at, which brings a question to me. What would you think of a resume that is 1.5 pages, or to go into the second page Do you want things spread out so that way it's a full 2 pages?
Oh, no, it doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to you.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I like that. This is pretty. So I've added Grammarly to my I downloaded Grammarly to my desktop, and I'm seeing these types of things where it's like giving me these suggestions on how to better write
Do you like
the
it?
content. I'm actually liking it because okay, I'm like totally getting off topic, and I'm sorry, but Grammarly is free, but even in LinkedIn, it's giving me suggestions on how to better write content than if I didn't have Grammarly. So it's weird. So it's not just in Microsoft Word, it's offering me suggestions, but it also offers me suggestions when I'm writing, you know, a connection request to somebody or writing content in LinkedIn. It's giving me suggestions on how to better state what I'm saying, and it's costed me absolutely nothing. So I'm a huge fan of Grammarly all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm taking that note right now. I'm like, Grammarly, look into it. Yeah, that's awesome. Because I told you I'm a big like spelling and grammar nerd. So
Yeah.
I'm
And
like
it's
I'm weird. I really like all that, and I pay attention to it. So I'll look
But
that
are
up.
you are you part of the grammar police?
No, 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 no. I'm not. No, but I appreciate good grammar. But if I'm not gonna like, no, I'm not a grammar police for sure. No.
Because I know there's a lot of people that are grammar police, and if they saw a resume that was improperly written or something like
Oh
that,
no, no,
automatic like, no, I'm not gonna look at you.
no.
any-
And I don't. Sometimes I wonder, hopefully not, hopefully this isn't getting too off topic, but sometimes I also wonder if it just depends on which recruiter you get, because for me, I have the life experience I feel like that I have. Like I know like people like my dad, people like
Uh-huh.
my son, like, so I think of people like them who they don't really pay that close attention to grammar. They might miss a few things every now and then, but they're still really smart. You know, so just because, so I don't hold it against somebody, even though I appreciate good grammar, I'm not going to hold it against somebody, if that makes sense.
Right. No, it absolutely makes sense. And I think it's a relevant conversation to have because
Yeah.
it goes back to you never know the recruiter that you're dealing with and the personality of that recruiter that you're
Mhm.
dealing with. And it's sort of that ability to adapt. So, I mean, of course, as we're talking about grammar, of
Mhm.
course, it's always best to be proper in how you write things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how some people take it to a whole other extreme.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
people judge me on my mathematical abilities, I would
Oh,
really be bad.
don't get, oh, I know. Don't get me. Oh, I can't do math at all. Maybe that's why I'm extra into spelling and grammar. Cause that's like, I'm really good at it and I enjoy it. I'm passionate about it, but math,
Right.
no, not so much.
And we don't worry about Just stay away from math.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, here we go. All right. So another way that we're looking at is then once again, delivery style. And we've covered a lot of this already. So delivery style is really kind of written for the eye of somebody that's looking at your resume. If we look at this example right here, it's very, I think it's appealing. It stands out. It's got some icons. It's definitely got tables, columns, etc. It's got a lot of content for being on one page. It's appealing to the eye. It's got some triangles and it's got a square up top, etc. You can find this stuff on Canva or even Microsoft Office has resume templates. The one thing I'll say about using a template is that they can be very difficult to tailor your resume because of how it works within the template, so to speak. That's why I typically believe in just building your resume in a Word document. Actually, this resume that we're looking at was actually built in a Word document, just using tables and columns. But if you, and this is where the conversation came up about applicant tracking systems, if you uploaded this resume into a company's online tracking system or ATS, it may not be able to have been read. because there are, once again, icons, tables, lines, triangles, different colors, etc. So if I was applying for a job online, filling out the online application at a company's website, I'd probably say, don't use this resume. It looks super nice, but a computer is not going to be able to read it. So what I would say is, if you had something like this, that's great. Only use it when somebody says, hey, shoot me your resume, I'd like to see it, or shoot me your resume, I'm going to go give it to Joe, or something along those lines. It's not being uploaded into a system. So you can have fun with it. As far as, we already talked about searching images of different types of resume styles based on your industry to get an idea of something maybe that matches with you. And then, of course, the content that's in that resume could be relevant as well. We've talked about the length of a resume. So 2 pages is obviously going to be okay. If you're going to a job fair or a networking event, maybe create a resume that's only 1 page, that gives a quick snapshot of what it is that you have done. So that way it's not either on front or back or on 2 separate pages. And then once again, sort of think about relevancy. So this is kind of one area where, and maybe I go to the next slide where we talk about applicant tracking systems. So yeah, maybe let's hold that place mark that thought for a moment. But what do you think, like maybe when you see this style of resume coming across your desk?
Yeah, so this is totally fine. Like you said, if it's coming from, like, you're just shooting it to me personally, to my, right, straight to my email, that's totally fine. It's okay. It's easy to read. The colors aren't too crazy. It's chunked out and blocked out. I like that. But and the ATS that I know my organization uses, typically they're downloaded digitally, so I don't not that I'm aware of that it would like push it out or anything, but I do know that certain organizations that would happen. So
good. All right. So with that said, do I have any questions about delivery or presentation style resumes? It's basically all we've talked about so far today is, and looked at, would be what I consider to be a presentation style resume. So the next, well, let's talk about fonts. So we've already kind of dissected fonts. Thank you for those that have sort of set me straight. The one thing that I want to comment on this slide real quick before we move on, because we've already discussed it, is the size. So typically speaking, a serif font such as Times New Roman and Georgia and Garamond, they look smaller than what a sans serif would look. So in that aspect, you don't want to go any lower than an 11 or a 12 point if you're going to go serif. If you decide to go sans serif, because it is more of a block print, then you can go down to size 10 and it will still be readable. Any comments? Awesome. Okay, so ATS, this is sort of the boogeyman of job seekers. And I will totally be honest, I don't even understand how an applicant tracking system works. I hear that recruiters see every resume that has been uploaded. I see that applicant tracking systems can put out knockout words. They can search within a 50-mile radius. So if you have in your resume your location and it's beyond 50 miles, you're knocked out. But right here is a statistic that says 85% of resumes are never seen by a human. But yet I have recruiters tell me, no, I see every single resume that a person applies for. So you know what? I don't know what the heck is going on with an ATS. Is it a ploy for resume writers to get business? because they're going to try to scare you into coming to them because they know how to beat the ATS system. Bottom line, the way I see it is create a resume that is not super duper fancy like the one that we just looked at before. And then number two, make sure you're reaching out to recruiters or people that are in a position of hire at the company that you're applying to and try to become a referral. And we'll talk about that in our LinkedIn workshop in much more detail. But I'd like to think this isn't the boogeyman. And I would like to think if you have a fairly generic style resume, it would make it through their system. Do you want to discuss, like even you just said, you know, that your ATS is different than what other companies have. And really it depends on the size of the company, what software they decide to purchase, etc. But what are your overall thoughts and ideas about applicant tracking?
Well, I'm kind of where you are. I don't know everything about it. I'm a recruiter and I still don't really understand exactly how it all works. I mean, I know definitely, like you said, being a referral helps to kind of, you know, cherry pick you out of the ATS. But our ATS, I mean, yeah, it's you're going to digitally upload it, and then whatever you whichever rec that you applied to, somebody real, a human, a warm body is going to read that. So that's how it is in our organization. All of my recruiter friends at my organization, they attested to that. And yeah, I'm the same. Like I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna look at it. So that's how it is with ours.
Yeah, and I mean, as I'm sort of talking to more and more recruiters, they're like, no, I look at every resume.
Yeah.
I see every resume. And then I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, well, what is it then? What is it about this system that is so scary? And my only thought about is like, how do I know what is right or wrong? And that's to reach out and become a referral.
Yeah.
You know, try to figure out that process, which, you know, once again, we'll talk about in our LinkedIn workshop. So in my idea, like if you go to a company's website, we'll use Nestle Purina, for example, and you're filling out their online application, and then it asks you to upload your resume. I'm automatically going to make an assumption that it's going to go into some sort of applicant tracking system. And basically what it means by applicant tracking is it's essentially a database to where they can track the applicants. And this is what job they applied for, the recruiter that is hiring for that position, the content that's provided, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what I would probably try to do is I would probably try to provide them with a resume that is a little less fancy than what we had seen before. And as you can see here by looking at this example, it's very plain, it's to the point, there's no underline, there's no tab, there's still bold to make things stand out. But there's no tables, there's no graphs. Everything is justified to the left. We're not tabbing anything over. We're using a universal font. The bullets that we decide to use are standard bullets. They're not fancy at all. The margins are around 0.7. This should, if once again, a computer is looking at the resume before it goes into the eyes of a human, make it through that computer system. So sort of my question to Katie is, what if this version or look of a resume came across your desk? Would you look at it and be like, oh my gosh, this is bland, it's horrible, I don't want to read it? Or are you just worried about the content?
Yeah, no, this wouldn't bother me at all. No, because it's actually pretty simple and easy to read. I like, I like it when there's headings like that and with colon and then just kind of telling me a little bit. And as somebody else mentioned, notice where the education is on this one. I like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's pretty easy. I like that they, did professional. Yeah, it's not bad. It wouldn't bother me.
Okay, good. All right. So, I mean, once again, it's not like, oh my gosh, this resume is so plain. It's not going to catch the attention of the recruiter. They're only going to look at resumes that are eye-catching. No, I really would like to think and believe that they're actually more worried about the content that's in the resume than how it's laid out and how it looks.
Definitely.
So it's cool to have a pretty resume that when Katie says, hey, send me your resume, you're like, all right, I got this cool looking resume. I'm going to send it to Katie. But then when you're applying for jobs online and you're uploading your resume, you got this sort of version of a resume that is going to make it through a system if a system is looking at the resume before it goes into the eyes of a human. So same content.
Yeah.
It's just all the prettiness is sort of taken away from it. Awesome. All right. So this is crazy, right? Approximately 250 people apply for a single job. And out of those 250 people, 4 to 6 actually receive an interview, and only one of them gets a job. I literally just saw a post on LinkedIn that was talking about this. It was an HR position with LinkedIn, and there was like 1,400 people that applied for that job. So like, can you imagine you randomly applied for that job through their website or through LinkedIn Jobs? What do you think the odds out of 1,400 are that you're going to even get a call? Very, very low. This is why it's so important to become a referral and figuring out how can you separate yourself from either 250 or 1,400. I mean, even if it was 125, the odds are weighed against you. And this is why it takes 4 to 6 months, why there's a lot of rejection, why there's a lot of ghosting, and why it can get frustrating. But it's also why the resume is only a small piece of the puzzle, and that your LinkedIn profile is a bigger piece of the puzzle, but knowing people is the largest piece of the puzzle. Knowing people and getting referred is what's going to separate you from everybody else. So literally the resume is important. It's part of the process, but knowing people, building relationships and networking is really what I want you to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree with you anymore. I know I've said it once and I will say it again. I'm going to look at your resume and then I'm going to go immediately to your LinkedIn, because things that your resume, it's only one puzzle piece, right? To the big puzzle. And so I can read a little bit about you. And then if there are any kind of holes or if I have any other questions, I can probably find the answer on your LinkedIn. And not only that, but when I go over to my LinkedIn or your LinkedIn, I can see like what kind of activity, like what groups are you a part of, things like that. So it helps me see what's your professional brand too. So
it paints a much bigger story.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. So on the left-hand side, we have common mistakes. And it's ironic that Katie's actually mentioned some of these things. Over 2 pages long. Please keep your resume at 2 pages. 1 page is okay. I'm personally totally fine. And it sounds like Katie is fine with, and other recruiters I've talked to, they're fine with 2 pages as long as it's easy for them to read and easy for them to go through. Make sure your resume is tailored to the position that you're applying for. Yes, that means that in the end, you're going to have, 20 to 50 different resumes, but you're doing yourself an injustice if you're using the exact same resume to apply for every different job that you see. She talked about long paragraphs. She doesn't want to read long paragraphs, so keep them in bullets. Missing accomplishments. So this is really, once again, what's going to separate yourself from the competition is by having results in your resume. An unprofessional email, we talked about that from the very beginning. And then obviously it's like no comparison. It's like over twice the amount of problems that people have in their resume would be typos and grammar errors. So make sure, and if you do it properly, you start to build a connection with a recruiter or somebody in the hiring industry, they will look at your resume for you. I just don't want you to connect with Katie and say, Katie, hey, look at my resume. She's gonna be like, I'm busy. But if you were to see how Katie is engaging on LinkedIn, you're supporting her engagement, she starts to recognize your name. When you do that reach out and the ask, she's more likely to fulfill that ask because she already has that name recognition. So support her or support any recruiter and they will support you also. Also have straight civilians look at your resume. Maybe it's your spouse, or maybe it's a neighbor, or maybe it's somebody that's not affiliated with the service. So that way they can go through and say, what does a wing mean? What do you mean by a battalion? What does this mean? I don't quite understand. And that's going to help you demilitarize your resume. They'll also be able to pick out different types of typos and grammar errors as well. So I would definitely have other people looking at your resume to help you through the process. Any thoughts on these common mistakes? Awesome. Okay, so these are the biggest trends of 2022 in what you want to make sure that you have in your resume. Number one, spotlight your wins during the pandemic. How were you able to transition from working in an office environment to a remote environment? Were you able to maintain or increase efficiency? How did the numbers change? Was there a positive impact? Make sure that you state that. I feel like the industry is not necessarily going to 100% go back to everybody working in an office amongst each other. So if you can show how working at home, you were still able to accomplish different types of goals, etc., make sure that you put that in your resume. And that kind of goes back to, once again, showcasing your results and your accomplishments. I also want you to emphasize your soft skills. And this is sort of a trend that I'm seeing that's a little bit different than what I saw maybe 3 years ago. About 3 years ago, I would probably tell my clients to focus on their hard skills. But now I'm finding that a lot of companies like to see your soft skills. So a hard skill is something that you could sort of write a job description to. Program manager, this is what I did. Training and development, this is what I did. Whereas a soft skill is a little bit more like, I don't want to use the word motivated. I don't want to use the word self-starter. I don't want to use the word team player, because those are just overly too generic. And those are the soft skills that everybody is tending to use. So once again, using Google as your friend, Google unique soft skills for resume, and you're going to come up with some really good ones. Maybe it's such as collaboration, or maybe it's emotional intelligence or effective listening. Those types of things that are unique and different than what everybody else is putting in their resume. And then having the ability to discuss how you are an effective listener, how you use an emotional intelligence to get the results that you're looking for in your team. So think about those soft skills. Next is diversity, inclusion, and overall collaboration. How you work that into a workplace environment and how you've succeeded in those roles are also going to make you stand out. And then finally, how you brand yourself online, career marketing, the type of content that you post to show that you have the knowledge and the abilities that relate to your industry above and beyond what's in your LinkedIn profile and above and beyond what might be in your resume. Recruiters are out there looking at your online presence, not necessarily 100% going to see what you're doing at Facebook, what you might be doing on Instagram. They may not do that deep of a dive. Some might, but most don't. But they are definitely doing a deep dive into your LinkedIn profile, seeing what groups you belong to, checking out your activity. And if that aligns with your industry, it's only going to be a positive aspect for you. Katie, are you with me?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
All
mean,
right,
I
so
yeah.
anything you want to add to this?
No, you hit everything. Yeah, no, I again, I can't stress, the LinkedIn, making sure that that stays up to date. And yeah, I mean, you touched on everything. You left me nothing to say.
Thank you. So with that said, no, what really, literally with LinkedIn, which is a whole different area that we're going to dive into, you're literally better off having bare bones, no LinkedIn at all versus having a little bit of stuff on your LinkedIn. If you are putting your experience in your resume, make sure it aligns with your LinkedIn profile. The dates align with each other, the job titles align with each other. And then of course, adding more content to it is just going to paint a better picture as to how you're going to stand out amongst your competition.
Use the features section.
I love the featured section.
Yeah.
So come to my LinkedIn workshop and we'll talk about it. Okay. Next. Questions on resumes before we start to talk about cover letters real quick. I guess everybody's good with the resume, right? Awesome. All right. So a cover letter, it's designed to highlight your skills and abilities that are a little bit different than what you had put in your resume. This is an area where I actually kind of like maybe you to talk a little bit more about your soft skills, because they may not translate over into the resume, or you might not have a lot of space. A lot of times in a vacancy announcement, companies will talk about soft skills that they'd like you to bring to their organization. So if you can talk about those and they align with your personality, put it in your cover letter. Another really good thing about a cover letter is it displays your knowledge of the company that you're applying to. It shows that you've done the research on that organization, and it might be an opportunity for you to drop some insight as to what you know about that company as you're applying for the job within them. Obviously, you want to personalize your cover letter to match up to every job that you apply for, and then use this as sort of another form of a sales pitch. There are some things that might be in a vacancy announcement that you don't have room or it doesn't fit in your resume, such as the ability to travel 50% of the time, the ability to take or accept work in a hybrid setting, or the ability to lift 50 pounds, just kind of throwing some different things out there. While you wouldn't necessarily put that in your resume, in the cover letter, you can say, I notice this position requires 50% travel. That aligns with what I want to do next in my career. For the most part, you want to submit a cover letter for every job that you apply for. Does that mean recruiters are going to read your cover letter? Maybe, maybe not. Probably depends on the recruiter because they're all a little bit different and they're all really kind of busy. But you're better off providing one than not providing one. Katie, do you read cover letters?
Yes, if somebody submits a cover letter, I definitely read it. I think it helps to, and especially like I said, being a military spouse, I understand the importance of a cover letter. I need to explain why there's gaps in my resume and what I learned during those gaps and things like that. Yeah, I know for most of mine, we will tell our service members right up front, you do not need a cover letter, like for us personally, for what we are doing. But Scott is right. I mean, typically for a lot of roles, it's better to have one than not have one, because what if they wanted one? I know there are a lot of, and a lot of my recruiter friends, they just don't read them because I think they'll read them if there's like a gap or something, just to see if it is explained in a cover letter. But I again, it kind of goes back to the personality of the recruiter. I would read it.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I've heard is I've heard it's breaking down in 33%. So 33% of the recruiters will read a cover letter before they look at your resume. 33% will look at your resume, and then if they have any questions or concerns or they like what they see, they'll then go read your cover letter. And the other 33% don't really care about a cover letter at all. So
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so 66% of the time they do want to see some sort of a cover letter. So as a result, I coach provide a cover letter with every job that you're applying for. But I think another thing that you hit on that is absolutely 100% correct is it kind of tells the rest of the story. So if you have an employment gap, the cover letter is a great place to explain why there's a gap in employment. Maybe let's say, for example, your background, your most recent position was in IT management or program management of IT, but you want to get back into the hands-on aspect of IT, you can explain to them into the cover letter. You will notice that the past 5 years, I've been more of a program manager. However, my passion aligns with being more hands-on, yada, yada, yada. It's kind of a way to complete the story that might not be covered in your resume. So as you can see here, we're basically looking at 3 or 4 paragraphs. So the introduction is how you heard about the job opportunity. And if at all possibilities, you can drop a name of somebody that works for the company that you're applying for, and they're a good employee, I would drop their name. The second part would then be the body. And this is where you discuss how you are qualified for the job that you're applying for. You might add information that is relevant to the position that's not in your resume. You could potentially put it in a paragraph or a paragraph and bullet type format. But this is where you tell the rest of the story is in the body. And then which would be either 1 or 2 paragraphs long. And then the final paragraph would then be your closing. And this is how you plan on following up with the organization. Maybe you provide your contact information again, those types of things. So we're basically, first paragraph is how you heard about the job. Second and third paragraph is how you're qualified for the position. And then the fourth paragraph is how you're going to do a follow-up and the next step that you're going to take. Down and dirty, easy schmeezy. And once again, a quick Google search, logistic cover letter. And that will give you some ideas of how to write a cover letter as it relates to your industry. Any questions on the cover letter? Wonderful. Next, the thank you letter or the thank you card. This is often overlooked. Most people don't take the time to provide some sort of a follow-up or give thanks to the person that they have talked to throughout this process. So what it does is it just shows a genuine interest, and it puts your name in the mind of the hiring manager one more time after they've potentially talked to other individuals. So once again, sort of like a cover letter, we want to make sure that we keep it brief, and we want to send it probably within 24 to 48 hours after we've had a discussion with an individual. It does say here, use email as a last resort. I think at this point in our lives, email is probably going to be the way to go, unless, of course, you're sending a thank you card, which would literally be you go to Walgreens or any place where you can get a stack of thank you cards that you hand write out and you send to a person. Katie, my friend, what are your thoughts on thank you letters? And do you ever receive thank you cards, and how do they differentiate themselves from each other?
So I'm a big believer in thank you cards. When I was interviewing, I always sent a thank you, and you wouldn't believe sometimes the response, they'd be like, thank you for your thank you. They were just shocked because so many people don't do them. I feel like just recently I had to do a round of interviews, and out of, I think I interviewed, I want to say 10 different people. One of them sent me a thank you. And when the hiring manager asked me for my review and my input, I made sure that person was at the top, and I said, you know what, they did a great interview, and you know what, bonus points, they sent a thank you card. So we remember, we notice when you do it. I typically, if I do get them, they are through email, and that's totally fine with me. I don't mind. It's still, you took the time to tell me, what you enjoyed about our conversation. Tell me why you think after our conversation, mention something that we talked about that piqued your interest and really, drove it home to you why you either really loved, this organization or why you really think that this would be a great fit for you. Very important.
I love this. And another thing that you can do in a thank you letter is after you've gone through the conversation pieces with a company, is if there was something that you wish you would have said that you forgot to say, in the letter is a good time to kind of bring that up. During our conversation, you asked me blah, 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 blah. I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit more, and then discuss what you wish you would have said instead of what you actually said. Is a good place to do that. So, a letter via email, totally fine. Of course, a thank you card is going to be something that is going to be sent snail mail that the person is going to actually hold in their hand. And obviously it wouldn't be as elaborate because you only have so much space. But one, both, it just kind of depends on how you feel about the process. I know as I've applied for jobs, I like the idea of sending a thank you card because it's a little bit more personable.
Exactly. I couldn't find my unmute button fast enough. Yeah, I'm the same. Like I feel like, especially if it was a great, talk, a great chat that we had. And it is, I feel like, first of all, they took the time out of their day to talk with you and to give you their undivided attention, and to share just information about the role. And I think it shows, it says a lot about you, that you appreciated it. So.
And the other thing that too, that to sort of, as I'm thinking about it, is yeah, maybe ultimately you're not the selection for the person, but because you've given thanks and expressed your gratitude, they're going to keep you in mind for something else down the line that might be a different fit or a better fit, because you took that time to give thanks.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, this is Charles. Quick question or quick. So I was in a class talking about interviews and things of that nature. And the instructor said, have a card or something out in the car. So when you leave the interview, you go out and write whatever on that card. And then you take it back in, give it to the secretary or give it to something and say, go give it to this, or can you give this to this person? What do you think about that?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to ponder it a second. Here's what I think there's a strategic approach to a thank you card also. And I think if it was like right after the interview, I think it would carry a little less weight.
Yeah, because there wasn't a whole lot of time for reflection.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're like, okay, I know I'm going to do this, and then it's expected of me, so here it is.
Yeah.
I like the idea of maybe potentially asking the question at an interview, and Katie backed me up on this. When do you plan on making a decision? And then once the recruiter or the hiring manager answers that question, that's when you strategically plan to send that thank you. If they're going to make a decision within a week, sure, you want to make sure that you do it like right away. If they say, well, there's a little bit of a delay, we're going to be interviewing, 5 or 6 more people, it'll probably be the end of next week. So maybe a couple weeks. Then I'd probably wait a little bit longer before I submitted that thank you card. So strategically, your name is going back in their mind again versus kind of, I think what Katie said, it's a reflection thing. What I'd rather you do is when you get back to the car, write down the pros and the cons of what happened at that interview, what you wish you would have said, or what went well, or what you wish you would have done better, and then incorporate that into the letter and then deliver it to them.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said strategic, because it does, and you have to take in a lot of different factors. Like you said, how long, is it going to be before you hear back from them? Because if you do it too soon, then they're going to forget about you once it comes back to, so, or maybe not forget about you, but you know what I mean? Like you want to make sure that you keep them kind of warm, right? So maybe if it's going to be a week, then but I don't know, Scott. Sometimes I go back and forth, because then again, I feel like if you send it like 24 hours, I think you'd be good. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
I once again, I kind of go back to trying to be strategic about
Yeah.
when you put your name in their mind one more time. So that's kind of the direction that I would like to go with it. Make sure you always ask for a business card, or what's the best way to follow up, or something along those lines, so that way you have their snail mail address if you decide
Yeah.
to send the card. And if you don't have that, hopefully you have their email address, so that way you can send a letter. But I like the strategic approach about it versus taking it right back into the reception. I've applied for a job that I really wanted so bad that I actually sent a thank you card to the receptionist, because I thought that she kind of helped me through the process of interviewing and gave me a little bit of insight or whatever. Because a lot of times, and I don't know if this happens with your organization or if it happens in the past, a lot of times the hiring manager will go out to the receptionist and ask the question, how was this person acting before they came into the interview? What were they doing? So to get on the good side of that person, that's sort of the go-between you and the person making a decision, is a great idea also.
Yep. I agree. Yep. And a lot of the times the receptionist is the one that's setting up the interviews and the other various email correspondence as well, because they a lot of times act as the coordinator, so they have a lot of interaction. So always be that I'll just go off on definitely make sure you any contact with a coordinator or anything like that while you're working up to that interview, make sure you are on it with your niceties and everything, because they will talk to, and the hiring manager, like if you do something that's outlandish, they'll be like, do you know what this person said? Like they remember and they know, and the hiring managers do talk to them.
100%. All right, so let's see here what we have. What if you have multiple interviews in the same day? Should you send all? So, I mean, once again, I would probably once again, get an idea if we're talking about a panel interview. Charles, are you talking about like you interviewed with the exact same company and did multiple interviews? You're not necessarily talking about multiple interviews at different organizations.
No, the same organization. Like you go in, you set, maybe you have a hiring manager, and then they send you to maybe an exec or a manager that wants to talk, and then you go to someone else. Maybe you have 2 or 3 that you're meeting different. So I mean, how do you? I'm assuming you just try to focus on who is the decision maker, but should you still kind of try to get all encompassing?
I personally would get all of them. Thank you card or thank you letter might resonate more with one of them than another person. I mean, let's face it, we all know that there's some type A personalities out there that might get it some sort of a thank you letter and they'll be like, all right, yeah, whatever, it's a thank you letter. But then there's some others that might be a little bit more blue, if we understand true colors, and they'll be like, they would just eat it up, right? And then that person that really eats it up would go to that type A personality boss and be like, oh my gosh, I really like so-and-so so much. They followed up with me, da, 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 da. And that could make an ultimate decision. So to me, I would probably just go ahead and say, send one to everybody. Katie?
Yep, agree. Send one to everybody. That actually happened to me when I was doing interviews too. And I, like for myself, when I was interviewing for jobs, and I sent one to everybody because they all do different things. And I'll tell you right now, like my team, we talk to each other about different candidates. So definitely they're going to talk to each other. They're going to know, they're like, oh, they sent me this. Oh, they sent me that too. And it just shows that you realize that everybody on that team is important and has a value. And yeah, definitely. Everybody, hands down.
Perfect.
Everybody that you came in contact with, not like the whole organization,
Right.
but whoever you talked with. Yeah.
Love it. All right. Any other questions as we relate to thank you cards or thank you letters? Awesome. This is good. All right, my friends. It is time to now rock your resume. Sorry, it's not Christina. It's even better. It's Katie. I forgot to fix that slide. But Katie, I mean,
It's fine.
Thank you so much. You've done a fabulous job. I'm really excited that we're able to record this. If you stumble across anybody that you're like, hey, Scott, can you share the resume writing video to them? Just let me know and I'd be happy to share it to them. And I'm assuming that you're okay if we share this video to people that might not have been able to make it.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Okay. Do we have any questions out there at all as we start to wrap this up?
So I did have one in regards when we were talking about the chronological.
Okay.
So I had a time period where there's probably more than one military wise being deployed where, I was stationed at one place as an instructor. Then in the middle of my job there, I deployed and did a whole different aspect, came back, and then I was instructor again.
Okay.
So my timeline is going to look like, it's going to look strange because I'm going to have a timeline that's supposed to be inside the other timeline.
This is a great question. And I'll provide Scott's sort of input or your options, and then it'll be interesting to hear what sort of Katie has to say. And Scott's going to be very political about this and go both ways and say it's really depends on how you want to present the information. If something happened during your deployment that you really want to put in your resume and make it stand out, then I would probably say separate the time frames that they happened. If there really wasn't anything in there that you want to highlight in your resume, then I probably wouldn't bring it up at all. I would just, leave it as you're at Scott Air Force Base from 2017 to 2021, despite there being a deployment somewhere in between. What you could do is obviously you could put the current role, put in the new role of a deployment, and literally put it in parentheses as deployment, and then go back to the role that you had prior to it, even though they align. There's just so many different ways that you could present this information that I don't think it would be a negative. But at the same time, the key is, did anything happen during that deployment that you want to tell them about? Another thing that you could potentially do is you could put logistics manager, Scott Air Force Base, 2017 to present. And then within that description, you put during deployment, and then listed the whatever it is that you wanted to discuss, without necessarily saying where you were stationed, the time frame you were stationed, etc. Katie, what are your thoughts on this? I do see it a lot.
Yeah, the same thing. And typically it's kind of what you said. They will allude to it. They'll say, during deployment this, or like, just for an example, say you went on a deployment and you became a UAV pilot, right? So if that is instrumental to this role that you are applying to, you should definitely make sure that you make room and you put that in there if it is pertaining to it. So yeah, I think you touched on everything, Scott, once again.
Yeah, no, I think as I pondered a little bit more, I probably wouldn't separate them. I think to a recruiter that might get a little confusing. Like, you were here, you went there, and then you went back here. I think I would put, once again, logistics manager, Scott Air Force Base, 2017 to present. But then in the description, you put something along the lines of during deployment, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I was just going to say
Like, you're kind of like jumping around back and forth, and it becomes confusing to somebody that doesn't understand. Like Katie being a military spouse, she would pick it up and she would get it. But Maddie, who is 26 years old, straight out of college, and she's a new recruiter at Nestle Purina, she'd probably be like, well, I don't understand how is he here? He went there and then back here.
Yeah.
So I'd probably encapsulate it into one time frame.
Yeah, I think with
And just spell it out
my
as a deployment
with my issue though is it's such a distinct
change.
difference of what I was doing, and and it incorporates with what I'm going to do and continue doing with my job. So so I just, like I'm saying, like you were saying, Scott, in regards to somebody that doesn't know, they might look at it different. But if I put it inside of my instructor and saying it was during a deployment, then I think it might get lost, because I really want it to stick out. And
Scott, could he do some type of a just because I know
So-
you deal with him more, could he do some type of a subheading or like a sub, you know what I'm saying, like a sub bullet?
I'm trying to go back.
So
to,
Scott, I did send you my email or my resume, but to give you a chance to look at it. But so while you're pondering that one, my other one is that, so you talk about military, we have we work this many years. So I went for 2 years. I went underneath the Army civilian schooling, where I went to school for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
So I've got a job, then I've got that 2-year break. And then I've got, the rest of my career. So it's kind of like, it's almost like I don't have anything in that career or in that 2-year time period. And how do I reference that where somebody will know? I mean, because I know I could put that in the cover letter. That's one thing, but in my resume, that 2-year window that I was at school
Yep.
is not in my work history.
So I would add it to your work history and disagree if you need to, Katie, or give a different insight.
Nope, that's what I was
Literally,
gonna suggest
As
too.
as you're going chronologically through your work history, just put, military schooling 2000 to 2002.
Okay.
Because that fills the gap.
Okay. I could do that.
You don't have to elaborate on what the school, you might want to put a bullet maybe as to what the schooling was about, but at least it then fills that gap for us without taking up a lot of space.
Okay.
It's so much better than like totally leaving it out and making us wonder, well, where was he those 2 years?
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Easy
so
enough.
just put it chronologically and we'd be able to go right through it and be like, okay, all right, yeah, he was in schooling. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly. And that's just it. If I was looking at it, I'd be like, oh, okay, boom. I wouldn't skip a beat. So be fine.
Yeah, so with my thought going back to the deployment is you could sort of do sort of this highlights of performance type thing or selected accomplishments and then incorporate the things that are relevant to what you want to do post-military that you did during your deployment right up here without necessarily saying it was during the deployment. And then once again, and that we totally remove this section altogether. And then it just flowed into your work history. And then you don't necessarily talk about being deployed at all. Something like that. So you take that great content that you did while you were deployed, put it up in highlights of performance. And then once you get into your work history, you just talk about where you were stationed and what you did.
All right. I'll have to think about that. That's gonna be a little hard.
Yeah. I mean, and once again, kind of, and this is why, I mean, because, everybody is a little bit different in where they've been and what they've gone through. This is why sort of setting up that one-on-one appointment can be advantageous to both of us because we talk it out. And then as we're talking it out, you come to a decision as to what's best for your resume. And then we kind of go from there. But
Gotcha. I already sent you the request.
okay, it's a matter of having that discussion and then, kind of weighing the pros and cons and then coming together with a decision.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Any other questions out there? All right. I think we're good to go. Thank you once again so much for your time, Katie. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully people reached out and connected with you. And I look
Yeah.
forward to doing it again. Hopefully you're able to scramble some things around so that way you can come in person in March to do our workshop.
I'm
Um,
hoping. I hope so.
I totally understand. If I need to reach out to anybody, let me know and I'll reach out to them and tell them the value that you brought. And then we'll go.
Oh,
from there.
thanks. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
It
I
was great. I loved being here. Thank you for having me. And I'm glad everybody got to come and learn all these awesome tips. And yeah, it was great. And feel free to reach out. Like Scott said, connect with me on LinkedIn or I put my email in the, if you have any questions, I put my email in the chat box too. So feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend and reach out to us. And if you have any questions, we're happy to provide you with guidance as you go through this process. So have a great weekend. Enjoy your President's Day and be safe.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Have a good
Bye.
weekend. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, guys.